On First at 9 this Monday, the 23rd of June 2025. Middle East Flashpoint. The Israel-Iran conflict embarks on its 11th consecutive day as Israel targets another Iranian nuclear site. The Iranian parliament, in retaliation, decides to close the Strait of Hormuz. All eyes on oil. Global oil prices rise following Iran's decision to close the Strait of Hormuz. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to test samples of oil from Nigeria as a potential alternative. Inflation. Sri Lanka's overall rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index increases to 0.6% in May 2025. From Parliament to the Treasury. Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma officially appointed the new secretary to the Ministry of Finance.
Cinec Campus Open Day. මේ මස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Enrolling now for the June 2025 intake and complete your degree in 2 years.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome. You're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest developments in Sri Lanka and around the world. In your top story this evening, as the US continued to rain bombs and missiles on Iran's nuclear sites, the Iranian parliament decided to pass legislation authorizing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important trade routes for global crude oil flows. This prompted US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to call on China to discourage Iran from closing the strait. China, while condemning the US attacks, called for greater international effort to de-escalate the Israel-Iran conflict. However, Israel and Iran continue to exchange deadly missile fire, with the Israeli military carrying out a fresh strike on Iran's underground Fordo nuclear site. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council met today to discuss US strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, where the UN chief urged a halt to the fighting and a return to serious, sustained negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. With the United States Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entering Iranian airspace, the Israel-Iran conflict embarked on its 11th consecutive day today. The United States yesterday obliterated 3 prominent nuclear sites in Iran with massive bunker-busting bombs with the aid of the US Air Force's B-2 bombers. Condemning the attacks, the Iranian foreign minister told reporters that the United States had crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities, saying the warmongering administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for dangerous consequences. State media later announced that the Iranian parliament had passed legislation authorizing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. In response, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio today called on China to encourage Iran not to shut down the strait, describing the measure as economic suicide for China and warning that such action could inflict far greater damage on global economies. China, while condemning the US attacks, called for greater international effort to de-escalate the Israel-Iran conflict to prevent further impact on the global economy. Meanwhile, Israeli military officials stated that about 20 Israeli fighter jets struck targeting 6 airports, missile launch and storage sites in Iran's western city of Kermanshah in the capital Tehran. Israel also carried out a fresh strike on Iran's underground Fordo nuclear site. Following Israeli attacks, Iran had launched a fresh wave of missiles toward Israel, and air raid sirens were activated across northern and central Israel, including in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Israel Electric Corporation noted that a wave of Iranian missiles disrupted the electricity supply to several communities in southern Israel, which came after strikes hit adjacent to a strategic infrastructure facility. Israel's energy ministry said that 8,000 houses do not have power currently, but it is expected to be restored within 3 hours. According to the latest updates, the Israeli military confirmed continuous strikes on the Iranian capital of Tehran, focusing on the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran says more than 400 people have been killed and at least 3,056 others wounded since Israel launched its attack on June 13th. In Israel, at least 24 people have been killed in Iranian strikes. The United Nations Security Council met to discuss US strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged all to act immediately and decisively to halt the fighting and return to serious, sustained negotiations on the Iran nuclear program. In the meantime, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, stated that the US bombing likely caused very significant damage to the underground parts of Iran's Fordo nuclear site buried deep in a mountain. In a related development, foreign media reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin met Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In televised comments, Putin said the absolutely unprovoked aggression against Iran has no basis and no justification. Amid the incessant strikes between Israel and Iran, the Sri Lankan ambassador to Israel, Nimal Bandar, confirmed that there have been no reports of injuries to Sri Lankan nationals amid ongoing strikes. 3 Sri Lankans are scheduled to travel back to Sri Lanka via Eilat, the TABA border crossing, and Cairo airport. Additionally, 12 more Sri Lankans had visited the embassy seeking assistance to return home and are expected to be repatriated. The ambassador also stated that the Indian embassy in Israel is offering seats on flights from Amman, Jordan to New Delhi for Sri Lankans with the approval of Sri Lanka's Minister of Foreign Affairs.
චන්දුරුසුනේ කාගෙත් වන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
යාඩියා ලොව වැඩියෙන්ම අලෙවි ඉලෙක්ට්‍රික් ස්කූටරය අවාන්ස් ඔටෝ වෙතින්.
Reacting to Iran's decision to close the Strait of Hormuz, global oil prices have risen in international markets. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's state-run Ceylon Petroleum Corporation said that while there is a risk of local fuel prices increasing in the near future, measures are being taken to manage any potential pressure resulting from ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. These include a plan to test samples of oil from several countries, including Nigeria, as possible alternative sources of supply.
With the Iranian parliament's decision to close the Strait of Hormuz, the critical maritime passage connecting the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, used by the world's major oil producers, global oil prices have risen. Countries surrounding the Persian Gulf, including Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, all significant oil producers, depend on the Strait of Hormuz to access international markets. The strait, located within the territorial waters of Iran and Oman, handles a significant portion of the world's oil trade. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz in 2024 and the first quarter of 2025 accounted for over 1/4 of global seaborne oil trade and about 1/5 of global oil and petroleum product consumption. Additionally, the strait carried about 1/5 of global liquefied natural gas trade in 2024, primarily originating from Qatar. Due to its strategic geographic position, there is no viable alternative sea route to bypass the strait. Therefore, any disruption in ship movement through the strait could have major repercussions for global oil and LNG markets, potentially causing a sharp rise in prices. In response to Iran's latest decision, Brent crude futures rose by 16% or 0.2% to $77 and 17% per barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude increased by 14 cents or 0.2% to $73.98 per barrel. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation said no immediate changes to local fuel prices are expected in the near future. However, the CPC added that it is taking precautionary measures to mitigate any potential risks arising from escalating tensions in the Middle East. Accordingly, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is looking to test samples of oil from several countries, including Nigeria, in order to purchase them as a remedy in case of disruptions to the traditional supply chain.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Apico Next Gen. Make the leap to faster sleep.
The ruling National People's Power continued to secure power in local councils where secret ballots were conducted, while the Samagyu Jana Balawegaya gained ground in institutions where open ballots were held. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal today issued an interim injunction halting the scheduled inaugural session of the Wanatha Villua Pradesh Sabha, which was scheduled for tomorrow. Efforts to secure power in local government bodies lacking clear majorities continued today as elections were held across several such institutions. Accordingly, the National People's Power emerged victorious in 6 councils, while the Samagijana Balavege and the Lanka Tamil Arasukachi also secured control in 3 and 4 institutions respectively. To date, the NPP has secured power in 47 of the 178 councils where no single party commands a majority. The NPP now governs a total of 198 local government bodies, 151 of which they won outright. Meanwhile, the SJB-led opposition currently only holds 25 councils. Notably, the SJB won control of the Hambantota municipal councils and Buttala as well as the Amanganga Korale Pradeshya Sabhas through open ballot elections held today. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the NPP consolidated its position in Millaniya, Navagattegama, Rattota and Bulatkahupitiya Pradeshya Sabhas as well as the Kalutara and Matale municipal councils through secret ballots. Tensions flared at the Kalutara Municipal Council when the NPP council members advocated for a secret ballot while the SJB called for an open ballot to elect the new mayor. Following a brief adjournment, a secret ballot was conducted, resulting in SHDN Somaratna of the NPP being elected the mayor with 17 votes, defeating Sumit Adli De Silva, the SJB candidate backed by the opposition, who secured 13 votes.
In today's election to select the mayor of the Kalutara Municipal Council, the NPP candidate secured a majority vote. An independent councillor was elected to the position of the deputy mayor of Kalutara. We are not aware of the political affiliations of those who supported our candidate. It is possible that members voted according to their individual consciousness. We believe that they have cast their vote consciously for the betterment of the municipal council. Today's election was conducted by the local government commissioner for the Western Province in violation of established electoral procedures and guidelines. We intend to pursue legal actions against her for these procedural breaches. We strongly believe that at least 4 councillors were bribed to influence the outcome of the election.
Meanwhile, during the inaugural session of the Matale Municipal Council, opposition councillors accused a Ceylon Workers' Congress member of violating Section 180 of the Municipal Council Ordinance by holding office unlawfully. In protest, the SJB-led opposition walked out, challenging the legality of the session. Despite this, with 12 councillors, including 10 from the NPP and 2 from the Ceylon Workers' Congress present in the chamber, Ajit Kottahachi of the NPP was elected mayor in a secret ballot. In the meantime, the Anamaduwa Pradeshya Sabha was thrown into disarray when the SJB staged a walkout after a decision was made to elect the chairman via secret ballot. Due to the absence of quorum, the local government commissioner adjourned the meeting indefinitely. A similar confrontation unfolded at the Derana Pradeshya Sabha today when the SJB-led councillors walked out, resulting in the indefinite postponement of proceedings due to the lack of quorum. In a separate development, the Court of Appeal today issued an interim injunction halting the inaugural session of the Vanatavillu Pradeshya Sabha, which was scheduled for tomorrow. The ruling followed a petition by Samantha Munasinghe, leader of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna in the council, alleging an unfair distribution of seats for female councillors in violation of the mandatory allocations made to ensure representation of women. Sri Lanka's overall rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index increased to 0.6% in May 2025 compared to minus 0.8% recorded in April this year. According to the data from the Statistics Office, food inflation rose to 5.9% in May, up from 2.9% in April 2025. Year-on-year inflation of the non-food group, meanwhile, increased to minus 3.4% in May from minus 3.7% in the previous month. On a year-on-year basis, the contribution of food commodities to inflation was 2.53% in May 2025. The contribution of non-food items stood at minus 1.97%. Appearing for the first time before the Parliamentary Committee of Inquiry probing his alleged misconduct, suspended Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakoon firmly denied any involvement in the shooting incident at the W15 hotel in Waligama and labelled the accusations against him as politically motivated. Tennakoon also claimed that the underworld figure Harak Kata and his drug trafficking network received patronage from the Criminal Investigation Department. The Parliamentary Committee of Inquiry investigating the conduct of suspended Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakoon convened for its 10th sitting today at the Parliament premises. In a significant development, Tennakoon appeared before the committee for the first time and provided sworn testimony in response to the corruption allegations levelled against him. Initially examined by his legal counsel S. Veeravikrama, the inquiry primarily focused on the investigation surrounding underworld figure Harak Kata. During the inquiry, Tennakoon emphasised the considerable efforts made to apprehend Harak Kata and extradite him to Sri Lanka. Tennakoon claimed that even while in the custody of the CID, the underworld figure continued to operate his drug network with apparent impunity, suggesting internal protection from the CID. He further disclosed that Prasanna Alvis, the former director of the Terrorism Investigation Division, had submitted a list of 149 individuals linked to Harak Kata and that verbal instructions had been given to the Colombo Crime Division to investigate those named, as Harak Kata and members of his network received patronage from the CID. Attention then turned to the controversial W15 hotel shooting in Waligama. Tennakoon admitted that the Colombo Crime Division team went there with his permission, intending to apprehend Harak Kata's associates. However, inconsistencies in the ballistics report concerning the raid had raised new concerns, as the CCD officers had claimed to have discharged 9 rounds and officers attached to the mobile patrol unit admitted to firing 6 rounds, but scene of crime officers had recovered 21 shell casings, suggesting the presence of a possible third-party shooter. When pressed on whether he had a personal stake in the incident, Tennakoon strongly denied any such involvement and claimed that the accusations were politically motivated to remove him from the position of Inspector General of Police. Minister of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs Ananda Vijaypala says authorities have seized nearly 2 tons of heroin and crystal methamphetamine within the past 5 months. The minister made this statement at a press briefing held today in conjunction with the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking observed annually on June 26th. Meanwhile, Acting Inspector General of Police Priyantha Veerasurya noted that most of the narcotics entering Sri Lanka are being trafficked from Pakistan, Afghanistan and other neighbouring countries.
Over the
past 5 months, we have been able to seize close to 2 tons of heroin and crystal methamphetamine. This is a significant improvement, a 100% increase compared to previous superficial rates. We have already launched a series of operations targeting narcotics across the country. On the other hand, we must also focus on reducing demand. The National Dangerous Drug Control Board is primarily responsible for implementing demand reduction strategies. A range of rehabilitation programs are currently in place and the government has allocated 950 million rupees under the Clean Sri Lanka initiative to support these efforts. According to our data, approximately 400,000 individuals in the country are addicted to drugs. Our plan is to initially establish a rehabilitation center in each province and eventually expand to have one in every district. Since the new government assumed office on September 23rd, 2024, we have seized 1,253 kilograms of heroin, 2,121 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine, largely through joint operations with the Navy. Additionally, we have confiscated 12,491 kilograms of cannabis, 22 kilograms of cocaine and 2.6 million narcotic tablets. The estimated street value of these seizures is approximately 23 billion rupees. These drugs are often traded using foreign currencies such as US dollars, and transactions are commonly conducted through informal systems such as Undial or Hawala. We have identified several key trafficking hubs in Pakistan, Afghanistan and nearby countries, which are the primary source of drug inflows into Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka Broadcasters Symposium 2025, a conference aimed at re-energizing the broadcasting sector, is to be held this Wednesday, the 25th of June in Colombo. A press briefing regarding the conference was held today.
A press conference to raise awareness of the Sri Lanka Broadcasters Symposium 2025, jointly organised by the Sri Lanka Broadcasters Guild and the Ministry of Health and Mass Media, was held today at the auditorium of the Department of Government Information.
Through this symposium, we aim to address the current challenges and trends in electronic broadcasting. We will particularly focus on the challenges brought about by the rise of digital media and media policies. Looking ahead to the future and the challenges we must face, all parties working in the media industry will come together to discuss how to confront these challenges and how we should engage with governments. This discussion will center around how we can tackle this global challenge. In addition to expanding the knowledge of those involved in the media industry, the public also has a significant interest in this field. There are many misconceptions and we hope to address and reduce them through this conference, especially considering the current level of competition. The entire media industry is caught up in a whirlwind and has undergone significant changes. In such a situation, I see this symposium as an excellent opportunity to discuss these changes, how to move forward while navigating them, and how we should adapt to the evolving landscape.
විකාශකයන්ගේ සමුළුව මම දකින්නේ.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now, Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma was officially appointed the new Secretary to the Ministry of Finance. The appointment letter was handed over today by Secretary to the President, Dr. Nandika Sanatkumar Nayaka. Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma was appointed to the position following the retirement of former Finance Secretary Mahinda Sirivardana. Dr. Surya Peruma, who served as a Nationalist Member of Parliament representing the National People's Power and former Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning, tendered his resignation from Parliament last week. He has extensive experience in financial regulation, having served as a director at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka. He played a key role in boosting Sri Lanka's global rankings in the World Bank's Protecting Minority Investors Index from 74th to 28th place. State-run Sri Lankan Airlines reported a loss of 8.4 billion rupees for the 2024-25 financial year, reversing a 3.7 billion rupee profit from the previous year as revenues declined despite lower costs. Revenues dropped to 299.1 billion rupees from 335.8 billion, driven by falling passenger revenues, while cargo remained flat. The 2024-25 loss came despite a 4.09 billion rupee exchange gain. In contrast, the previous year's profit included a 26.6 billion rupee exchange gain, indicating that core losses were actually worse back then. With large dollar debts, Sri Lankan's financials are highly sensitive to currency shifts. In the 2022-23 financial year, 107 billion of its 165.8 billion loss stemmed from exchange losses caused by macroeconomic missteps like rate cuts and currency depreciation. Accumulated losses have now reached 615 billion, far outweighing its 213.2 billion rupees in equity, signalling deep capital erosion. To stay afloat, the airline received 9.8 billion rupees from taxpayers, with another 20 billion budgeted for this year. In a stock update, the Colombo Bourse remained in a negative territory today as a result of price losses in counters such as Sampath Bank, Commercial Bank and John Keells Holdings. The benchmark all-share price index dropped 1.89% lower to settle at 16,765.40, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 dropped 2.12% to close at 4,991.16. Market turnover crossed 2.4 billion rupees. The banking sector was the top contributor to turnover, followed by the capital goods sector. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 166 million rupees. Analyst at Capital Alliance, Dinel Samaratunga joins us now with a few thoughts to round off our Markets in View segment for the week.
The domestic stock market fell throughout the previous week. The S&P SL20 fell 1.1% from 5,155 to 5,099, while the ASPI dropped 1.6% from 17,360 to 17,088. In addition to the index performance, market turnover dropped by 21% to 2.5 billion rupees. Furthermore, the government raised 115 billion rupees last week through Treasury bill auction. Internationally, the major US market indices declined the previous week, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and Nasdaq dropping by 0.72%, 1.08%, and 1.29% respectively, because of growing tensions on commodity prices and the conflict in the Middle East.
In more world news, 22 people were killed and over 60 others wounded in a suicide bombing in a Greek Orthodox church in the Syrian capital Damascus yesterday. That's all we have for you tonight on First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.